ReZero, Volume 2, Prologue, The Road to Redemption begins. Even now, she deeply recalled the feeling she had at the time. Familiar sights had flames all around them. People she knew had turned into silent corpses. A world coming to an end. A closed world. A thankless world. A world that was harsh, senseless, and brought nothing but pain. Even so, she reached out with her hand, moved her fingers, quivered her lips, and pleaded. After all, while it was a world beyond saving, it was still the only one she had. It was a world that always had turned its back. It was a world that always had its back turned to her, locked away before her eyes, a world she could gaze into only from afar. She wanted to abruptly tear down that wall, squint at the broad, dazzling world before her, and carve into her unopened eyes the color of sun-baked skin, the color and smell of burned meat, the color of the beautiful horns that danced in the sky. Here was the world about to end, and what was she thinking about? For even then, she could still remember the feeling she had at the time. Thereafter, she devoted each and every day to expunging her guilt over those feelings above all else. Chapter 1. Self-Conscious Feelings. The first thing that flew into his eyes as they blinked open was an artificial sense of dazzling white. Beyond the light, a broad ceiling spread before him, with crystals attached to it providing flickering light that illuminated the room's interior. Confirming in his head that he was waking up, Subaru's mind immediately grasped how good his wake-up felt. The pillow feels different. Smells better too. Definitely higher class than usual. Subaru savored the feel of the blanket and the other fine scents as he sat up in bed. At a glance, he knew it was a room for the upper class. Subaru had slept in a king-size bed that could fit 5 people to spare. The room was about 90 square feet, oddly spacious with only a bed in it. The quality of the painting on the wall is so high it makes the room feel lonelier, A guest room, then? Subaru, now completely awake, gently swung his legs over the side of the bed and checked his physical condition. He made sure he could rotate his legs and shoulders, finally putting up his clothes and gingerly touching his belly. Abdominal wound totally gone. No bruises, of course, no scars either. This world's medical tech is pretty awesome to not leave sewing marks. Sewing my big scene wasn't all just in my imagination anyways. He recalled the strings of events leading up to his abdomen being deeply slashed. Subaru, a completely ordinary Japanese schoolboy, was abruptly summoned to another world in a painfully cliché manner, coming face to face with death, literally, on multiple occasions. That he was still alive was thanks to a string of coincidences that one could only call miraculous. But how much time's passed since then? No way to tell the time, He glanced all around the room, unable to find any signs of calendars, clocks, or anything similar. The gold-glowing crystal above the door stood out. The darkness outside the window told him it was night, which was news to him. Subaru slumped his shoulders and took a deep breath. Then he voiced the inescapable conclusion on his lips and finally resigned himself to face reality. Any way you slice it, this time I managed to avoid a return by death, First time it was a pathetic death. Second time it was a bold death. Third time I died like a dog. Fourth time I got involved in mortal combat and died from a stray blow, is what I would be saying if I hadn't overcome that development. Man, if I died then, I'd be on a one-way ticket to Mobville. Flopping back into his bed, Subaru counted the causes of his deaths on his fingers. Looking back on it, armed robbery included, he'd been slashed to death every time. He didn't want to see a blade again any time soon. At any rate, he'd somehow managed to avoid return by death and had finally been able to move time forward. The fact that he was all right after sustaining a plainly lethal wound meant, considering the situation, it was that girl's, Amelia's healing magic, An image arose in the back of his mind of a beautiful lilac-dyed girl with silver hair, Amelia. He thought it was safe to assume she'd healed his abdominal wound. Having had a wound healed by Amelia once before, it was a natural assumption for Subaru to make. Subaru reasoned that, as a result, the guest room he was resting in was part of a mansion owned by Amelia. Then again, it's entirely possible this mansion's connected to Reinhardt's family. But well, glancing towards the door, Subaru let out a dissatisfied sigh at the lack of information on his current situation. Normally, there'd be a pretty girl at your bedside when you open your eyes, saying, "Are you awake?" And there weren't any pretty girls when I was summoned either. For a summons, this one sure has some glaring inadequacies. This summons was definitely third-rate. He couldn't slice through armies, and he'd barely had any meaningful encounters. Besides, nothing's happening so far, so it's up to me to do recon and make myself comfortable. Subaru practically leapt to his feet and put his hand on the door. Refreshingly cool air blew in through the open doorway, and the floor transferred the cold directly to his bare feet. When he left the room, the walls and the floor of a corridor, all in warm colors, unfolded before him. The passageway continued on and on to both the left and right. Frighteningly, he couldn't see either end of the corridor. It's so much like a palace that all I can say is, whoa, it's insanely huge. Can't even tell if anyone's here. Delicately walking down the corridor on bare feet, Subaru scowled at the silence. It was as if he couldn't hear any signs of life that should normally be there. It's too quiet, even for the night. It makes me not want to raise my voice. Personality-wise, Subaru was geared towards asking, "Is anyone here?" in a loud voice, but the present circumstances made that too dangerous. After all, Subaru had not yet determined whether this was a safe place for him or not. Subaru had accepted as a matter of course that the host was friendly, but in the worst case it was possible the assassin, with a love of slitting bellies, might have returned and abducted him. All the same, he wouldn't be able to lift a finger if he assumed everything was doomed. Kenshi once said, "Life must be lived." That's what I think too. Incidentally, Kenshi was Subaru's father. It was very fitting that a person like him was his father. Subaru's steps forward did not falter, but after walking a while, Subaru twisted his neck a bit. "I've walked this much, but I haven't hit a bend. Is that even possible?" Unsurprisingly, he could not contain his misgivings. Subaru turned around, thinking about going back the other way. Then he raised an eyebrow and remarked, "Huh? This painting... I think it was right in front of me when I came out of the room." Subaru crossed his arms as he stood in front of the oil painting decorating the corridor. The painting was of a forest scene at night. He felt like it was the same as the one he'd seen when he'd stepped out of the room. Unless Subaru had moved at the literal pace of a snail, he'd jumped at the only possibility he could think of. Maybe the floor has some trick that makes it move around on its own, or could it be that the corridor loops around? He'd probably turned in the opposite map direction after going a certain way. It was a field trap like you'd see in an RPG. If the corridor's looping, maybe it's got something to do with return by death? Subaru, hoping someone out there agreed with him, grasped the doorknob of the closest room and opened it. When he did, a no-frills room that had nothing within greeted him. Of course, no one was in it either. A looping corridor with any number of rooms. So if I don't find the right one, I can't get out? Though he hadn't yet truly appreciated he'd been summoned to another world, here he was facing a new fantasy element right after waking. So if this goes according to cliché, it could take me hours to find the right one. I'll go hungry, my mind will give out, and then my body will too. If that's the case... The situation made Subaru want to hold his head. Taking a deep breath, Subaru wiped the sweat off his brow and took the first decisive step forward. He twisted the doorknob of the door facing the oil painting. In other words, the door that looked like the one Subaru had exited. "I'll sleep in my room till someone comes." Maybe that first room was the goal anyway. Speaking characteristically flippant thoughts, Subaru entered the room.
How do you look like such a deeply irritating person, I wonder?
Within the book-filled archive that Subaru had no recollection of seeing earlier, a girl with curly hair glared right at him. It was a room that truly screamed book archive at you. The breadth of the room was about twice that of the first one, chock full of bookshelves that rose to the ceiling. Each shelf was lined with books. It hurt to even try to guesstimate. Man, here in a place full of books, and I can't read a single one. What a bummer. His breath caught when he looked all around the bookshelves, unable to find a single one with the title on its spine in Japanese. It wasn't some sort of alphabet, either. Rather, these were characters like those he saw in the royal capital, the characters in common use in that world. Subaru let out a sigh as he looked over the characters he couldn't read, no matter how hard he tried.
Looking over someone else's bookshelves and sighing on top of that? Are you trying to offend, I wonder? Perhaps I should respond in kind.
Your pretty face will go all to waste if you're that prickly. Come on, smile, smile.
I am simply pretty by nature. I suppose my contemptuous sneer should be enough for the likes of you.
Putting the tips of her fingers to her cheeks, the girl formed a cruel smile. Betty was a sweet, lovely girl, a sight he'd seen several times in this world already. She looked younger than felt in the slums, no more than 11 or 12 years old. Her frilly hairstyle matched her ornate dress, both framing her lovely face. Her pale, cream-colored hair was worn long, distinctive for its swirling rolls. If she'd only smile properly, there was no one's heart she'd fail to melt. She held a large book in her hands as she sat on the wooden footstool, from which she looked up at Subaru. You know, big words like contemptuous sneer, huh? And you're in a bad mood because I got it right in one go. My bad. I've been doing stuff like this since way back. Subaru Natsuki had a knack for picking the right answer to difficult questions with many options, without hints, on the first try. In the past, Subaru had unwittingly ruined many a scheme like that. The corridor from before made one more on the list.
All my hard work constructing the domain, all for naught, just like that. It's quite horrid.
I suppose GMs would want me to trigger all their events instead of skipping to the end, so I get it. My bad, my bad. Subaru made a light wave of his hand in apology, while the girl glared at him with half-lidded eyes. Apparently, it was this girl's scheme that Subaru's thoughtless act had foiled. Well, let's make that water under the bridge. Could you tell me where this is?
It's my archive. My sleeping quarters, my private chambers, perhaps.
Shouldn't that make me feel kind of sad for you? I mean, you don't have your own bedroom to sleep in. That's horrible. Or about you using a library as your private chambers. Maybe I should just laugh.
Are those marks intended with a touch of teasing, I wonder?
The annoyed girl, replying with blunt sarcasm, who called herself Betty, puffed out her cheeks and advanced upon Subaru.
I'm finally reaching the limit of my patience. You should be put in your place a little, I suppose.
Hey, whatever you're planning, let's not. I'm just an ordinary guy. No compatibility at all here? His eyes became smaller and damper as his body made tiny quivers in a showy pose. But the speed of the girl's soft footsteps increased.
Stay right there.
Suddenly, Subaru was assailed by a feeling like a chill up his spine. The girl already before his eyes stretched out her hand all the way to Subaru. Subaru froze as the girl, her height not reaching near his upper chest, stared at him with pale blue eyes. His skin broke out in goosebumps as a quiet, high-pitched ringing echoed inside his skull.
Is there something you wish to say?
As the girl posed her question, he unfroze for a moment. Subaru searched for the best thing to say during the instant he had been permitted. Subaru's gaze wandered as his lips quivered. It's not gonna hurt, is it?
Should I applaud your devotion to your flippant tongue, I wonder?
Speaking with a tone of genuine admiration, the girl reached her hand to Subaru's chest. Her palm pushed against his breast, her fingertips pressing softly against the surface. It felt ticklish, and, wah! The next moment, Subaru felt like his entire body was on fire. Something was running wild inside him, making him feel like he was on fire from the tips of his fingers to the very ends of his hair. The eerie pain was as if a finger of flame were tracing his internal organs. His vision darkened. When Subaru came to, he had fallen onto his knees, a large amount of tears flowing from him.
"It seems you do not faint. Perhaps you are as sturdy as I heard."
What did you do, Lolly?
"I simply interfered with the man inside your body. Does the circulation feel slightly off, I wonder?"
The girl calmly murmured as she knelt down and jabbed a finger into Subaru's body.
"Well, it would be good to confirm whether you had a hostile intention or not. And for your rudeness towards my hard work, your mana should be confiscated before letting you go, I suppose."
Subaru, having reached his limit, was unable to remain upright from the jab, his head falling to the floor. Despite this, he was able to slowly use his neck, looking up as the girl glared down at him with a sadistic smile. "You're not human, are you? And I don't mean your personality."
"You're quite slow to grasp that for someone who has met Pucky already."
The girl looked down with amusement as Subaru crawled. She looked younger than her choice of words hinted at, feeling like the sort of little girl who'd rip the wings off an insect in a cruel game. Correction. Your personality's inhuman too.
"Surely a sublime being far beyond your ability to measure, human."
It was an overtly glacial statement coming from the lips of a little girl. Subaru felt the inside of his chest smolder, but he had no strength left to describe the heat with words. Subaru's consciousness sank into darkness against his will. "Geez, I just woke up and I'm getting knocked out again?"
"If you died here, your husk would be troublesome to remove. I shall speak to the others."
"Don't say husk. It makes me sound like an insect, you little brat." Subaru returned to sleep once more, unable to move even his frivolous tongue.
"My, it seems he has awakened, sister."
"Yes, Rem, he is awake." When he next awoke, two girls spoke, their voices sharing the same timbre. He was in the same soft, comfortable bed as before. A slight opening of the curtains let in the dazzling rays of light of the sun, burning sleepy Subaru's eyelids. He distinctively assumed it was morning. "Ugh, I'm not so much nocturnal as I am a denizen of the night. Waking up in the morning makes my chest burn." Wide awake, Subaru sat up as he remembered that his day and night cycles were inverted while school was out. He looked around, rotated his shoulders, and shifted his hips towards the window as he looked in that direction.
"Dear guest, it is now 7 solar time. Dear guest, it is about 7 solar time."
The friendly voices conveyed the time of day, 7 solar time. He didn't know what that meant, but he guessed it meant something similar to 7 a.m. That being the case, if you don't count the wake-up earlier, I've slept for about a whole day, huh? Well, my record is 2.5 days, so this is no big deal, really.
"Sister, did you hear? Quite a lazy thing to say." "Yes, Rem, I heard. Quite a good-for-nothing thing to say."
So were these two ladies who'd been chewing me out in stereo here? Subaru sat up quickly, taken by surprise at the girls sandwiching the bed from both sides. The girls rushed a short distance to a corner of the room, joining hands and drawing their faces close as they looked at him. Standing side by side, their faces were two peas in a pod. The girls were obviously twins. Both stood about 150 centimeters tall. Their big eyes, pink lips, and the soft, youthful loveliness of their faces made them outright adorable. Both wore their hair in short bobs, with their hair parted to fall across one eye, the right eye on one and the left eye on the other. The way their hair was parted, and the fact that one had pink hair and the other blue, were the only visual clues to tell them apart. The twins watched Subaru carefully. His mind quivered as though they were all scratched up, and he suddenly realized, no way. There are maid outfits in this world too? They wore black apron dresses with white accents and white lace headpieces on their heads. These outfits were specially modified to expose their narrow shoulders, which, combined with the short skirts, flaunted their body lines in scandalous ways. Subaru didn't know a whole lot about maid outfits, but he was certain the level of skin exposure represented the designer's personal taste, though the twins who wore them were beautiful regardless. I thought maids were supposed to dress modestly, but I think I'm a fan.
This is terrible, sister. Right now, in dear guest's head, you are the subject of obscene, degrading thoughts. This is dreadful, Rem. Right now, dear guest's head has become filled with completely disgusting thoughts about you.
Don't take my mental capacity for granted, ladies. You're both going to star in my fantasies. Subaru crossed his forearms and made suggestive motions with his fingers. The gesture made the two maids' faces tremble. The girls wrapped around each other, releasing their hands and pointing at each other.
Please forgive me, dear guest. Let me go and defile sister instead. Please stop this, dear guest. Let me go and humiliate Rem instead.
Where's the sisterly love here? I mean, selling each other out and making me some arch-villain? The two maids pushed the role of scapegoat onto the other, looking at Subaru as if wondering which one he'd sink his evil fangs into first. That was when he'd suddenly noticed. The girl stood inside the open door, tapping it softly while looking at the three of them.
Couldn't you wake up with less drama?
Today she was letting her long silver hair hang naturally all the way to her hips. Her outfit was not the robe he'd seen at the Capitol, but rather an outfit that accentuated her light skin and slender physique with its design. The skirt was unexpectedly short, Subaru marveling at how it showed off her long legs, pumped to fist. I get it. Whoever chose this, I get what they were thinking. The silver-haired girl, Amelia, gawked at Subaru's praise.
I'm not quite sure what you're referring to, but I'm very disappointed that I know it's something meaningless.
In one move, Amelia's sudden visit had greatly improved Subaru's mental state. In a place full of unknowns, his incident with the first little girl he had met was especially poignant. Seeing Amelia, a friendly face he'd known since just after his summoning to another world, made it all the more special in his mind.
To think I was worried a bit when I heard Beatrice was rough on you when you were low on blood. I really shouldn't have bothered.
I'm in a super good mood from waking up to your face, though, and I'm a little afraid to ask this, but... With Amelia giving him a suspicious look, Subaru put both his hands together and timidly looked at her with upturned eyes. You, remember all about me, right?
That gesture, for some reason I don't like it. Also, that's an odd question. I don't think I'd forget someone who stands out as much as you do, Subaru.
With Amelia smiling charmingly at him and calling his name, Subaru slumped his shoulders in relief. Then, realizing that for once a girl was calling him by name, he was rather flushed.
Please listen, Lady Amelia. This person was terribly humiliating, for a sister, that is. Hear this, Lady Amelia. This man was trapped and violated girls, Rem, that is.
The twins left Subaru behind, who was now red to the tips of his ears, as they rushed to Amelia's side to make their baseless charges. Amelia made a strange smile at their slander and glanced sideways at Subaru.
I don't know Subaru enough to say I know he wouldn't do that, but I trust that he probably did not. Don't tease him too much, okay? Yes, Lady Amelia, Ram shall reflect on this. Yes, Lady Amelia, Ram will reflect on this.
Despite their statements, the twins didn't appear to mean it even a tiny bit, but Amelia showed no signs of objecting to their attitude. Perhaps she was simply used to it.
Anyway, Subaru, are you doing all right? Nothing feels wrong anywhere.
Oh, yeah. Before I slept, I felt like my whole body was on fire and I was going to die, but I don't feel one bit of that now. I actually feel like I slept a bit too much.
If you're no worse than that, good. Can you handle a little stroll?
Stroll? Amelia was making a small smile as Subaru tilted his head.
Yes, a stroll. I try to go into the garden once a day, and this seems like a good time for it, no?
Once a day. Doing what? Watering the flower bed? Not exactly. One of the conditions of my pact with the various spirits is that I make contact and speak with them every morning. When Amelia said spirit, Subaru thought back to the cat spirit he'd seen with Amelia. A stroll and a chat with the spirits. It was a nice idea that provided fodder for his curiosity and his ulterior motives. Sounds like great rehab to me, Amelia-tan. How about I stroll around the garden and exercise while you're talking to the spirits? Well, if you don't talk too loudly or make a big fuss, sure. Eh? What did you say just now? Okay, it's a deal. Let's go to the garden. Hey, what did you say? What is Tan? Where did that come from? The pet name seemed to throw off Amelia. Subaru was hiding his blush at having her call his name so openly when he turned towards the faces of the two maids standing side by side. Hey, maid sisters, where are my old clothes? Feels like I've got in a hospital gown while I was out. I figure the mansion here lent this to me, but... Do you understand, sister? Perhaps he means that drab-gray rag. I understand, Rem. He means that blood-stained, mouse-colored piece of filth. Some guts there, calling it filthy and looking like a dirty wrap. If it's in one piece, could you hand it over? Faced with Subaru's request, the twins turned to Amelia. Their looks said they wanted permission. When Amelia responded with a nod, the twins politely bowed and left the room. You don't need to hear this from me, but you mustn't strain yourself. You were terribly injured. You closed the wound perfectly, though. Oh, yeah. As if remembering something, Subaru straightened his posture and slowly bowed his head to Amelia. Thank you for healing my wounds, Amelia-tan. You saved me. I really am scared of dying. I'd like to do it only once. Normally once is all you get. But, never mind that. After the spontaneous verbal jab, Amelia's purple eyes wavered as she looked at Subaru. I should be the one thanking you. You risked your life for mine when you barely knew me. Healing your wounds was the least I could do. Subaru's breath caught at her sincerely apologetic look. He hated himself for being unable to give her the reply he wanted to. Amelia had said never mind that at her saving him, yet it had been Amelia who saved him first. But the only record of that was inside Subaru's memories. Subaru smiled, holding in the gratitude he could never properly convey. Well, since we saved each other, I think we're all square here. Square? It means that neither of us owes the other a thing, so let's get along, brother. If you were talking to a resident of the poor district, this would be the time for him to kindly clap them on the shoulder. But at that moment, it was all Subaru could do to cover up his embarrassment and blushing face as best he could. Amelia made a small smile at Subaru. Do I really need a young brother this weird? That's a pretty harsh comment. He slumped his shoulders at the casual put-down. Both laughed at this exchange as the door opened and the twin maids returned. Subaru straightened as he saw them carrying the top and bottom of his tracksuit, one part each. Guess it's time to restart the day. His first day since surpassing return by death was truly beginning. Subaru shook his head when the maids offered to dress him, changing clothes by his own power before heading to the manor's garden with Amelia. Subaru let out a sigh of admiration as he looked over the broad garden. This is really big, too. The mansion's huge, but this is more a grassland than a garden. He'd seen gardens of the manors of well-off in manga and anime from time to time. They were the sort of places where you held dinner parties. There, in the middle of the huge garden, Subaru began stretching exercises to begin his rehabilitation post-haste. Amelia looked on curiously as she watched Subaru's movements. Those are odd moves. What are you doing? Oh, don't you do warm-ups here? You do them before starting strenuous exercise. I haven't really seen much of that, but I do understand it's dangerous to make sudden, hard movements. So people don't do stretching in this world? Oh well, it can't be helped. How about I teach you? Genuine warm-up exercises from my homeland, passed down through the generations. Amelia seemed to yield in the face of Subaru's confident proclamation. Right, just a bit then, she said, copying Subaru. Subaru stood beside Amelia and gave out instructions. Morning warm-up part 2. Reach high with your hands and stretch that back. What? No way. Just do what I do. I'll pound the essence of radio calisthenics into you yet. With Amelia lost, Subaru scolded her and followed the beat of the routine famous around the nation. Amelia was still bewildered at first, but proved a quick study. When both finished making their final deep breaths, Subaru spread both hands into the sky. And last, raise your hands! Victory! Victory! Okay, there you go, Amelia-tan. You are now a radio calisthenics novice. Having finished doing calisthenics with all her might, Amelia's face showed the new title had made a deep impression. But she made a face like she'd just remembered her original purpose. This really got off the beaten path, but if I forget this, they'll be upset. Amelia, making a thin, pleasant smile as she spoke, brought out a green crystal from her pocket and showed it to Subaru. Ah, that's a crystal for spirits to inhabit, like Puck. The kitty cat that slept through all the big stuff? Bet he doesn't know about my heroic scene then. The crystal glowed as if to rebuke Subaru's taking him lightly. The indifferent voice came from the crystal at first.
Oh no, not at all, Subaru. Leah told me all about it after things got wrapped up.
Finally, light poured out of the crystal and condensed into an outline forming atop Amelia's palm.
Hey, morning, Subaru. Nice weather.
It's been an up-and-down night and morning for me, though. First the looping corridor, then that menacing little girl. Now I'm past and working up a sweat with Amelia-tan. Amelia's lips tapered into a pout. People get the wrong impression if you say that. Amelia then looked at Puck, sitting atop her palm. Good morning, Puck. Sorry for pushing you so hard yesterday.
Morning, Leah. I'm the one who... Sorry for yesterday, though I almost lost you. Can't thank Subaru enough, really.
Puck looked at Subaru with his round black eyes as he stroked his pink nose with his paw.
Well, I owe you something. I wonder if there's anything you want. Something I can do, I mean.
Subaru's reply to Puck's grandiose statement was immediate. All right, let me touch that fur of yours to my heart's content. Puck's and Amelia's eyes went wide. Apparently, the speed of the reply had surprised them as much as the content. Shouldn't you take a little longer to decide? Puck might look small and unreliable, but his power really is quite something. Hey, to me, being able to feel fur like from the finest fabrics is a really huge thing. I wouldn't take any amount of money over it. No, seriously. As Subaru spoke, he indulged his right and stuck his finger towards Puck. First belly, then chin, and then the ears to finish him off. Oh, these ears are addictive. I'm totally into your fluffiness here.
I know from reading the surface of your thoughts, but to hear you actually say it, wow.
Subaru liberally toyed around as Puck made pleasant noises from his throat. Amelia let out a sigh of resignation as she watched Subaru and Puck play. Well, I'm gonna talk to the lesser spirits then. It's fine if you two play, but don't interfere, okay? So she dumped us?
She dumped us.
As both slumped their shoulders, Amelia made a point of ignoring them as she softly went to a corner of the garden. She gave the ground a light brush before sitting down. Amelia closed her eyes as pale lights began to surround her. He'd seen that sight before. Lesser spirits, huh?
That's right. Most are classified as lesser or greater spirits, though a lot are outside of those categories.
Not that it doesn't help, but I don't know how to classify them. Subaru knew that the lights frolicking around Amelia were lesser spirits because Amelia had said as much during the loop in the royal capital. As Amelia sat, she spoke softly to the minor spirits, smiling from time to time. The minor spirits seemed to brighten or fade accordingly. You said a pact with minor spirits, but, what is that?
A ceremonial pact with the spirit, forging a covenant.
Subaru frowned at the term he hadn't heard before.
You see, a spirit master can't use spirit spells unless she makes a pact with spirits first. The details of the pacts differ according to the spirits. Still with me?
So it's not like interest or in collateral for a bank loan, then. Gotcha.
My name's not Gotcha, but let's move on. So individual spirits want different things, but minor spirits like that just want pacts with simple conditions like contract with the caster.
So it's like easy stuff for beginners. I take it that it doesn't work for other spirits?
It helps that you're quick on the uptake. This won't get far if you keep going off on tangents, though.
Oops, said Subaru with a blushy smile. For his part, Puck gave a warm look as he toyed with his own whiskers.
Right. It's a bit harder to satisfy a spirit with a mind of its own, like me. I like to give to the pact maker as good as I take, but my conditions with Leah are pretty strict.
It's been on my mind since earlier, but Leah, that's a cute nickname.
Your Amelia Tan's even cuter, though. I should call her that, too.
Don't. Seriously, I'm begging you. With puffed-up cheeks, Amelia cut into their silly games. As Amelia returned, the spirits around her winked out. Apparently, spirit talk time had come to an end. Subaru stood up and brushed the grass off his rear. Quality time over. That felt easier than I expected.
I was mindful of you two, so I asked them to keep it short. We have things we need to discuss today.
As Amelia spoke, she offered up her palm. Puck leapt from Subaru, landing upon it. Puck's round eyes turned toward Amelia with what seemed like a small, satisfied smile.
It's all right. I got a good feel for him, and I can't find one shred of malice, hostility, or intent to do harm. Subaru's a good boy, though his personality is a bit weird.
No way to... Aghast at Puck appraising him to Amelia on various levels, Subaru could only gape.
Why did you... Even if it is true, isn't saying it in front of him hurtful?
That's fine. I'm a complete stranger to you, so of course you'd check me out. You're right to doubt, but that part at the end really hurt, Amelia Tan. Amelia quickly covered her mouth with a hand and made a pained smile at Subaru. Subaru hadn't touched Puck all over without a reason. He'd expected this to come up. Amelia and the others weren't so careless as to accept Subaru without knowing a single firm thing about him. No doubt that partially explained Ram's and Rem's demeanor. That said, I don't have any good way to explain. There was obviously no pre-existing record of Subaru in this world. Explaining that he'd been summoned was a tough sell. With good odds, he'd be treated as a lunatic. That being the case, letting Puck get a good read on him was the best option. Words from Puck, trusted by Amelia and able to read conscious thoughts, were a lot more convincing than anything Subaru could come up with.
It's all right, Leah. Oh, and I know what you were up to, Subaru. Naughty boy, using my mind reading like that.
I'm honored. Let's get along famously, my friend. How Subaru addressed them put a look of shock on Puck's face. He then broke into a wide smile.
It's been a while since I got this kind of treatment. I like it.
I'd rather hear those words from Amelia Tan. Oh well, as they say, to take down a general, first take down his horse. Well, you're kind of a cat, so does that still make sense? I wonder. A surprised look came over Amelia as she watched Subaru put a finger to his chin and sink into serious thought. When Subaru curiously raised his eyebrows, Amelia inhaled a bit.
Really, Subaru, you are so strange.
Huh?
Giving leading looks to a half-elf like me who speaks to spirits like it's a normal thing? It surprised me even as a joke.
In his heart, Subaru countered, Would you be as surprised if you knew it wasn't a joke? But he forgot all about that as he fell for Amelia's charming smile. This smile was on par with the one she'd given him when they'd exchanged names at the royal capital. It seemed fleeting and fickle, which only made his heart flutter all the more. Her beautiful, flowing hair was as surreal as dew in the moonlight. Her skin was as pale as the first snow. Her violet eyes seemed to hold Subaru's mind firmly in their spell and wouldn't let go. He knew she was sublime, beautiful, with a heart of gold wrapped around an unshakable core. Subaru wanted nothing more than to put his hands on his cheeks and give thanks to Mother Nature, but he abstained. Huh? Wonder what's with these two? And, as Amelia mentioned something she'd noticed, Subaru looked toward the manor. The twin maids were walking down from the mansion. Both gave formal bows before Subaru and Amelia, speaking in perfect stereo, not off by the slightest bit.
Master Oswald, Lord of the Manor, has returned. Please come this way.
Their perfect combo surprised Subaru, but the maid's change of demeanor surprised him more. Their earlier frivolousness was nowhere to be found, replaced by a sense of dignity befitting servants of the upper crest.
I see. Roswell. We'd best go see him then. Yes, and he said to bring our dear guest as well, should he be awake.
Puck wriggled into Amelia's silver hair. Amelia's face stiffened a bit as she patted down her hair. Watching her from the side, Subaru cracked his neck slightly at being addressed. "So, who is this Roswell guy, anyways?"
"Lord of this manor." "Ah, that's right. I didn't explain."
Amelia put her palm to her mouth as she realized her own slip.
Right. Roswell is... You'll understand when you meet him."
"You gave up on that explanation too fast."
He's too plain to describe?"
Amelia, Puck, Ram, and Rem all replied in unison.
"No, the opposite."
Subaru's jaw dropped open in a face of surprise, multiplied by 4. The blue-haired girl gently closed his mouth from below with her hand before giving a solemn bow. The pink-haired maid standing beside her motioned to the mansion.
"One cannot describe the likes of Master Roswell with words alone. You shall understand when you meet him, dear guest. It is all right. He is a kind lord."
The twins met each other's gazes and nodded, with the repeated affirmation serving only to deepen his doubts. With Subaru bewildered, Amelia looked like she grudgingly agreed with the twins as she gently reached out to him. Giving Subaru's shoulder a couple of pats, Amelia murmured in a grave voice,
"You'll probably get along just fine, Subaru. He'll wear you out, though."